Okay, we will call this meeting of the School Building Committee to order. A first item on our agenda is the approval of the October 14 meeting minutes. Those were shared with the committee. Do I have a motion to approve the October 14 minutes? Thank you, Chris. And second, Kathy. Thank you. Are there any corrections? If not, then all in favor of approving the October 14 minutes, please give me a sign. Any opposed or any abstentions? Hi, Chris, I see you. Do you approve?
Sorry, I just came in. I was having trouble getting on. What are we approving?
The October 14 minutes.
Okay, there was one thing I wanted to say on there. I think it's a matter of clarification, and it's about the cracked pipe casing. And as I understood it, when Al told us it was one of the casings that had cracked, the way you read it, it could be interpreted as many. I just thought it'd be for the sake of clarification.
I think there were three. I think there were three total.
Were there? Okay.
It was three.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Then I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. Tasha can record your approval on there too. That brings us to the OPM update. Adam, are you going to take the lead on that?
I will. So let me share my screen here so we can look at the look at some of the documents. So I'll start off with just kind of going on high level on our 2-month construction overview. So as you can see, we still have a long process for identifying and resolving some of the site elements, storm drainage, domestic water, etc. The geothermal wells that Chris was actually just mentioning, the drilling of those is wrapping up. And soon they'll move on to putting in the other portions of that system, the horizontal piping, etc. But it's a good marker to get past that, since anytime you're drilling into the earth, there's always questions about what you could hit. So it's good that we're moving past that portion of it. Similarly on the site, the pump house, which is in the back portion of the school, is currently getting some of its walls and structure and elements put in place. So that's moving forward. The bulk of the construction, as we know, though, is going through the foundations and the steel. And if you're to go out site, every day there's more bits of steel and metal deck, and the skeleton is really starting to take shape. The one, if you've noticed from this update as compared to the last time we've seen this, we have seen some material delays in terms of delivery, specifically roof deck. That's something that was noted by Newfield, which pushes out some of the steel installation. As of right now, there's no change to planning to open school when school's scheduled to open, but it is something where we're monitoring and reviewing the schedule to make sure that these types of procurement delays, either we can avoid them or they don't impact that end of construction, start of school deadline. So right now, Newfield is looking at the sequencing of the work and the critical path of work and sequencing that goes through each stage of construction to identify what areas might be able to be shortened, or if there's any way that the town can explore paying for extra time overtime for some activities if we want to pull the schedule back further. But these are things that we had mentioned a couple months ago as things we were looking out for, and we still thankfully avoided a lot of them thus far, but there are bits that are coming in that we have to monitor, like I said, namely the roof deck. Any questions on any of that just before I go on to some of the other elements I was going to talk about? Okay.
Don't see any questions.
All right. Another just sort of side update separate from construction, and I'll let Al talk more about construction later, is can you see my screen again with sort of the blue clouds?
Yeah.
So one item that came up a little while back was use of the platform area at the gym stage to use that space for music instruction. an additional educational space. And we had talked about potentially installing additional curtains to provide some soundproofing between what would be used for instruction and what would ostensibly be a pretty noisy gym space with basketballs and kids running around, that kind of thing. We had a meeting last week, just between design team and Colliers and Kelly and Lauren to look at this further and some of the ramifications of that, putting in a substantial curtain. And there would be a lot of infrastructure needed, and the cost would be probably a couple $100,000, and a bunch of extra steel work and structural work to make that happen. What we found, though, was that another one of the classroom areas to the south, which is, or to the east, which is closer to the music spaces, might be a better candidate for using that swing space. So rather than put in a big curtain that may or may not provide a sufficient amount of sound barrier for a music space compared to a gym space, what we'll be looking at is taking this classroom, 3.1 is the number, and seeing if this wall, we can just bump it out a little bit and add some more soundproofing to help keep a cohesive music area, and not disturb some of the instruction to the side over here in 3.2, and similarly not have bouncing basketballs get in the way of music instruction. So that's just it's a development that Richard and Jeff are looking at to see what this might entail in terms of beefing up that wall, so to speak. And that's a potential change that might be coming before the committee in a couple of sessions.
Rich has a question.
I'm just wondering, so are we going to be finding another place for another classroom? If we lose a classroom, this might not be an ideal solution if our population says that our population numbers say that we need to have 6 third grade classrooms.
Kelly might be able to speak to that a little more, but my understanding based on the different wings and different areas is currently this area would have an extra classroom. So that was why it was targeted for having the music swing space in this location, and then the cohorts as they go through the building from first grade, second grade, etc. They would be positioned accordingly, so that way you wouldn't have a cohort of 6 classrooms that would try to go into this location. Am I summarizing that well, Kelly?
You are. So the population upon entry next year will not require 6 classrooms at every grade level. There'll be one grade level that will only need 5 classrooms. And we know that will continue for at least 2 years. Clearly, this is a year by year kind of solution, but by knowing that there's a little extra soundproofing there, at least it gives us an alternative. We have considered other alternatives, mostly related to how classes are scheduled, that may also, be solutions in the future, or perhaps even next year. And we may even next year find we don't need 2 music classrooms, but we're going to start with that assumption, and this at least gives us that alternative. I also just want to add, and Adam mentioned this, that one of the reasons we did not pursue the acoustical curtain is because we couldn't guarantee that the remaining space was going to be adequate for a music room, or that we really were going to get the soundproofing that would be necessary to turn that platform into a classroom space. So it wasn't just the cost. There were just too many other logistics that left that not being an operable space for a classroom.
And to expand on what Kelly was talking about with regard to space, so the classroom that we're targeting is roughly 700 square feet. After you figure in putting in curtains and closing off the space, this platform area becomes far less than 700 square feet. I think it was something like 400 or 500 that we were quickly calculating during our working session. So even if we were to spend a decent amount of money and time and design and impact of the project, it wouldn't be an ideal space by any means. So in terms of just educational quality, it appears that the 3.1 classroom that we're currently targeting is a better better way to teach music.
Kathy?
Can I ask Kelly, what potentially could we use that first space for if we're not going to use it for what we planned on?
Are you talking about the platform?
Yes.
As a performance space primarily. We also talked about it will be wired with a smart board and well, it has projection for performance, but the smart board placement there would also allow that to be a space for PE instruction. So let's say you needed children to sit quietly or to sit and receive some instruction before engaging in activity in PE. That'll be a good space to do that because we'll have a smart board there. And it also will be used for performance rehearsals. So, you know, our fourth grade instrumentalists are growing strings program, and certainly we expect that there will be like a choral type of extracurricular as well in this new school. So that platform can be used for all of those.
Great. Thank you.
Mary, and then Chris Kiefer. And then Steve.
I just want to make sure I understand, if we have one grade that doesn't require the 6 classrooms that we've budgeted for, and we use this space that we all know as 3132, and at least I have been envisioning as the 3rd grade hallway or pod. I know we threw that word around for a while. As the grades come through, are we talking about we're going to have to move whole groups? I guess I'm not.
Yeah, not necessarily, Mary. We talked about that. Adam, can you go back to that section of the hall? So yeah, and I'm going to ask you to decrease the magnification a little bit so that we can see that other hallway as well. So one of the things we talked about, somebody said, well, next year, this could be the 4th grade hallway. And we said, yeah, it could. We would have to move 11 teachers in order to accomplish that. But the other thing that we could easily do is take classroom 4.1 and make that a 3rd grade classroom the next year, because the proximity is quite close. So is it a perfect solution? No. Frankly, there is no perfect solution. The perfect solution is to have had enough square footage for a 2nd full music room, but that didn't happen either. So, so we think that, you know, again, not perfect, but our enrollment projections have changed somewhat. I think largely due to COVID, over those that were developed or created for us when we designed this building. So if you'll recall, when we designed the building, we were expecting to have 600 students the year we moved in next school year. And right now, it looks like we're going to probably have closer to 520 students, maybe 530 students next school year. So it's a pretty significant reduction. And I don't, we will have new enrollment projections in December, but based on what we've seen over the last 2 years and just what's happening in the eastern part of Connecticut, I don't know that we're ever going to hit, well, in the next several years, that we're going to hit that 600 mark. So I think that we are going to have a little bit of swing space. And again, maybe the music room doesn't always stay in 301, but knowing that it's got a little extra sound insulation there makes it a really nice option if that's where we choose to put it.
Okay, Chris, and then Steve.
I'm just curious, and Kelly sort of answered this, but I'm kind of curious how we got into this, what feels like a predicament, where we didn't program enough music space and we didn't accommodate it in the original plans, either on the stage or in a swing room. Is the program different?
Yeah, I think what happened, Chris, is that the original specs called for the platform to serve as a second instructional space. At the time, we didn't understand the design necessities for the net zero. And Richard, you can certainly jump in here, but as it's been explained to me, Adam, if we can go back to the platform area, you'll see that there's a mechanical space behind the platform. And that does, yep. My understanding, I should let Richard talk, but my understanding was that did then create some limitations on what we could do with the platform and with the ventilation and so on for the platform.
Sure, I'd be happy to supplement what Kelly has been saying. We did consider adding some acoustic separations. In the initial programming planning phase, we did talk about the platform as being an instructional space. But if it becomes a music classroom, which has a certain acoustic separation requirement from the gym or other surrounding areas, then that was not planned for. The vision was that this platform could be an instructional space, but as Kelly pointed out, it could be an instructional space for health or PE. That could certainly be done. But it will forever be a windowless space. And so I think the solution that's being suggested is optimal. It's a classroom that could be a second music classroom. It could also be a regular classroom. I think that's the best scenario going forward.
But it sounds like, Kelly, let me understand, that this was known to be a need and somewhere along the way the ball got dropped?
No, the ball didn't get dropped, Chris. There was a point where we had 2 art rooms and 2 music rooms in this school. This is pre-referendum, and we could not get the state to agree to allow us to build a building of that size. And so, and some of that again is due to the extra mechanical space that the net zero requires. So we actually removed those spaces prior to referendum, knowing that we were building a building with a lot of swing space in it, and that we would use some of that flexible space to create these other instructional areas, as we did in the cafeteria for the art room. Unfortunately, when we got down to the final design, the flexible space for a music room just became harder to achieve given the acoustical and lighting and ventilation needs. So it was certainly not overlooked. It has been a known, something that's been known from the start.
Okay, Steve
Thank
and
you.
then Rich.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to point out that if we're insulating the wall between 3.1 and 3.2, we should also consider adding insulation to the ceiling so you don't have the floor-to-floor transfer. I know that was something we talked about with the music room initially and the preschool rooms above it. So if we think it's going to be loud, not just wall-to-wall, but ceiling.
I'd like to answer that question or that comment. Steve, you're absolutely right. We have reached out to our acoustic consultant just to make sure that that room does perform acoustically as required. And they did mention Jeff has reached out to Jeffy Holden, and the response back from the acoustical consultant so far to Jeff's inquiry is, yes, the ceiling needs to be looked at, as well as the door. So yes, this is going to be something that will come back at some point with a recommendation for how to treat not only that wall, but also the door and ceiling potentially.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, and Rich.
Steve stole my thunder. I was about to ask the same question about the ceiling, but I do like the idea of using 4.1 as a swing space. I mean, that's why we put that second door in there. So, it makes a lot of sense to use that room as a swing between 3rd grade and 4th grade.
Yes, we refer to that door as the Richard Weld door.
Hey, it's my claim to fame. I'm hoping there will be a plaque on that door.
Chris has a few of those too. Stair. We got to name that stair for Chris.
Okay. All right, so Adam, there's no action to be taken on that at this point, but it's a kind of, we'll look for something else coming along.
That's correct. Yep, it was just an update that kind of came around recently. So I wanted to touch back with the committee based on some additional discussions and findings. Moving on to the entrance sign. So during the last committee meeting, I had shared some documents I received from Ryan with regard to some of the gateway signage that's going in around town in terms of its design and function. And so the crux of the matter is that the committee needs to determine how it wants to proceed insofar as the developing a design for and then procuring the installation of the monument sign up by the street. So, if it's really just looking at potentially what the designs that Ryan had sent over and saying, does the committee want to do something similar? Are there different visions of what it wants to look like? And whatever is decided, not only will it have to be designed and bid, but also have to be reviewed again by the planning committee to ensure conformance with town standards, zoning regulations, all that good stuff.
So Ryan, I believe the first sign has gone in.
That's correct. I don't know if it's 100% complete yet. It was largely installed yesterday. That's at the intersection of 32 and 195. Yeah, it's, I think at that point it was a mock-up of what was going in, but it looks very much like that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems to have been installed in a way that conforms with our vision for what it would look like.
So, Tony?
There's a second image of a sign for somewhere else that is oh, there it is.
Yep.
A wall with a circle. That seems to me to be an ideal design for the school sign, because the circle can also say Mansfield Elementary School, I should imagine. And also, if we decided to find somebody to name the school for, or do something different, it wouldn't require an immense amount of change.
Okay, Chris, thumbs up that. Richard, are there limitations in terms of the size that we can have there? Do you know? From planning?
There are. I mean, typically planning and zoning regulations do dictate, usually in terms of square footage, what the size of the sign can be. So I don't have that information at the tip of my fingertips right now, but this is something that should be reviewed with the town planner and have a discussion with them about what the limitations are. And then knowing what those limitations are, then I would suggest that this committee reach out to the graphic designer who prepared the sign mock-up that you see in front of you and come back with a suggestion on how to incorporate the words Mansfield Elementary School into it. It may not be on that circle. It may be metal signs that are fastened to the stone wall, freestanding metal signs. And if they're, let's say, a white aluminum or a white metal of some sort, it could stand out from that stone wall. It look quite nice. But that, I think, should be done by the graphic designer who already has this town identification as a part of his task. So it's a matter of now adding the school identification to this sign.
And so if we were to start that process,
I would suggest we just send this particular graphic, if the committee chooses this sort of model for the school sign, and say to the graphic designer, well, first we would present it to the town planner and say, look, this, I can't read it entirely, but it looks like the wall is 10 feet wide.
10 by 8.
8 feet high to the top of the circle. So what part of this is the sign? Is the sign the circle itself, or is it the circle plus the wall? That's subject to interpretation by the town planner. she may say, no, it's only the circle that's the sign, and it certainly falls within the square footage limitations of the town's regulations. But the minute we may put letters on the wall, then the wall potentially could become defined as a sign. And so all of this interpretation has to be discussed with the town planner. And then with that information, go to the graphic designer and say, look, can you come up with a design that has the words Mansfield Elementary School on it?
Okay. Chris, you had a question or comment?
I'm just gonna, sorry,
Chris,
go ahead,
Chris
Chris.
McNamara, sorry.
Sorry. I just want to know how much we have in the budget for this and if a sign of this nature would even come close to what we have in the budget. And then this is a non-illuminated sign. And I remember people saying they wanted one that lit up.
So to answer both questions, we have roughly 30,000 penciled for this monument sign, which would be in line with the type of signs you're seeing here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I believe the two signs were on the order of 40, 50, something like that for two
Right.
signs.
Yes.
So it's very much within the ballpark of what we would be looking at. Insofar as illumination, that too would stem back to planning and zoning regulations. Sometimes there might be requirements for illuminated backgrounds. If you have one of those, if the Mansfield sign here, the circle was illuminated, there might be limitations on how much white or how bright it could be, or if you have pin lighting, that it doesn't trespass past the property lines, things of that nature. But if that's something the committee wants to explore, that's a question for the town planner, and it can be incorporated pretty easily within the design. So all from the committee, we're just generally looking for, hey, we like the circle sign. Can we get something close to that? Or, hey, we don't want the stone in the circle at all. We want something on a stone wall, like Richard was saying. That's the sort of ideas that we're trying to get some direction on, and then we can pursue additional information from the town planner and from the designer, Art FX or whoever this is.
So I would just add that there is conduit out there. There's power out to that location, so that could be either internal or backlighting or external lighting onto the sign.
I believe only conduit, Randy, excuse me.
Only
I believe
conduit?
only conduit. But it would be relatively easy to pull wires through it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Richard. Rich, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I think it's a dumb idea, so I'm going to withdraw.
Okay. Tony?
I just want to point out that the town has spent a great deal of money over the past couple of years on creating consistency in town logos, print, signage, et cetera, et cetera. So the school board has also adopted this kind of a logo for the school system within some variations. I think you would run into a little bit of conflict if you wanted to make dramatic changes in the sign. I'm not crazy about it myself, but this is what we chose, and this is the consistency that this is the kind of design that we are trying to be consistent with throughout the town, so that the town has a real identity.
Okay. Are there thoughts on then approaching town planner with this sign, something along the order of what we see here? Chris, you have a comment?
Yeah, can we just go back a second to Adam? It's not clear to me. Are you telling me that in the actual budget, are you telling us in the actual budget, there was about $25,000 for a sign the state is included that in the budget?
It's part of in the budget, there's a miscellaneous section, and then there's parts of contingency. So when we're moving funds and keeping placeholders aside, that is what we've put to the side to represent this type of fund. Anything the state approves gets approved on each individual application to the state. Scott can talk more about that for specifics of that, but it's not like we presented this sign to the state as part of the initial overall budget. That gets reconciled as it goes through the project.
The other thing to keep in mind is this is a state road. Linda probably knows this, and the state road has various setbacks, or you can rent the space.
Yep, that's
force
a
the town
very
to do
good
that.
point. So that's in one of the items I put in the folder was the site plan. So that's definitely something we need to be cognizant of to make sure we're either not encroaching in the right of way or doing so with, an easement from, or otherwise permission from the state. But that, excellent point. And that's something that will be one of the bullets with the town planner. So depending on how the committee wishes to proceed, presuming if they want to go with a circle or the other design or something different, that would be part of the initial email to the town planner, both the graphic and the just general site plan, because those are the two critical elements that she'll want to see in order to help guide the narrative and the discussion and make sure we're not putting a sign where it shouldn't be.
So is there a consensus amongst the committee that we can send this on to the town planner? Is there a strong preference for this sign versus the other version? You can see a version of that at the intersection 195 and 32 now. Chris McNabo and then I think Chris Kiefer again.
I think I'm in favor of the circular 10-foot sign. This one's 20 feet, much bigger. And I think I'm really aware of the cost of the sign and wanting to stay within whatever the budget is, and the lighting of something like this with the length of it, even if we shorten the length, would be much trickier, where you could light from the inside that circular thing and probably meet a lot of the requirements that we need.
Okay, other comments?
I concur with what Tony said, and I'm not really crazy about it, but or about the look of it. But anyhow, for the reasons Chris said as well, the circle sign makes more sense, at least if you have to have one or the other.
And the designer may have some variation on that as well. So it sounds to me like we are okay to go on to the town planner then. Is that appropriate, Adam? Is that we make that work?
Yeah. So what I can do then is I can take the just as a basis for reference, take the circle sign with the site plan and send that to the town planner to get initial thoughts, and then use that that information to guide the discussion with Artifacts insofar as they're coming up with a graphic design. I'm sure there'll be some fee involved that we'll need to discuss. But that this is the first step to get it moving in a direction.
Okay. Madison, you have a question?
Yeah, my question was, I think, I don't know, Tony, did you mention that maybe there's some also planning to have this is like incorporated into the public schools? Is the middle school also getting a new sign to go along with all the town signs?
I think that's a question for Ryan.
I'm not aware of any
Or
plans that are in motion for that, or imminent plans in motion for that, but it's certainly a discussion we could have.
Okay, I was just wondering if they would want to kind of coordinate if there was going to be a new one for the middle school, if we'd want to coordinate with the elementary school, if we want to have this kind of uniform signage around town, which I understand, would be desired. And just also, I agree with the idea of having this smaller sign with the circle in the middle. With what both Chris's mentioned, I agree with.
Okay, thank you, Madison. Okay, then I think we have our next steps in terms of signage.
That works. All right, and the last item I had on the portion was an update on an expedited approval by the subcommittee that occurred between meetings. And this is part of a talking points about a couple different things, so try to bear with me as I discuss it. So what we're talking about is the leach field for the concession stand septic tank or septic system. So this was an item that was observed in the field by Newfield, and basically what we're talking about. Let's see if I can pull up the plan. Yep. Is we have our concession stand and the concession stand septic tank, and the septic tank leads to a leaching field. As part of the original survey and the existing conditions documents that the project was using, the leach field was identified as being in this location. When the various contractors on the site started doing some work in the area of the pump house, they noticed that the leaching field was in a very different location than what the existing plans and surveys from before the project started said that was supposed to be. The issue being is that the leach field is far too close to the utility lines that are required for the pump house and our water system, stormwater, etc. So basically, the designers had something to go off of for their design. They designed everything to code, and then they discovered in the field that the drawings that they were basing their design off of were not accurate based off of what was in the field. This is all underground, so the new surveyor that came out for this project wouldn't have been able to see that the septic leaching field was not in the correct location. So what had occurred between meetings was an approval by the subcommittee to move forward with the design of taking the septic tank and connecting it to the sewer line for the new building. The other option that was a potential option was to take the septic tank and demolish it and move it over to this new location. However, that would have been substantially more costly and taken a substantial more amount of time because you have to get various approvals from the public health department, far more than just rerouting the system to our new septic line. So what the committee approved, the subcommittee approved was specifically the design fees for Richard and the civil engineer to move forward with remediating the situation. And we wanted to do that on an expedited basis because it's right there in the middle of all the site work that's ongoing. So that vote happened, and Richard and the civil engineer have been moving forward accordingly. The items that are coming before the committee tonight as part of the packet, one of which is the formal change to Richard's architectural contract to that effect that I just mentioned. Basically, we went off of this letter that you see here up on the screen. Bear with me, I'm scrolling. But basically, just a notification of the situation and the time-sensitive nature as such. So one of the items that Richard has put forward is amendment number 2 to his contract, effectively identifying this situation as a formal change to his agreement. The other item to discuss in this particular topic is the actual construction costs associated with making these changes. So I know that potential change orders are farther down in the agenda, but for the purpose of keeping the conversation together, the 2 potential change orders for this issue, number 32 is the option to the less recommended option to move and rebuild the leaching field over to this location. The second potential change order is Newfield's construction costs to actually reroute the leaching field as I had suggested earlier and tie straight into the new building septic tank. So those are the 2 options placed before the committee insofar as the actual construction costs. Again, strongly recommend option number 2, both from a cost and design and speed standpoint. But it's like I said, there's a lot of moving parts with this particular piece, and it needed to occur quickly. So first off, I'll stop talking for a second and see if anyone has any questions.
So the guidance you're looking for from the committee right now is whether we move that leaching field with all the associated, the work that would go with that, the costs that go with that, and the approval from the, I guess, health officials and so on. So that's the first option. The second option would be to tie into the septic system for the new school.
Correct.
And so what you're looking for from the committee is kind of just guidance on that. And your recommendation is the second one where we tie into it.
Not just guidance, but an approval for the actual construction change orders.
And in the approval would, if when we get to the piece, we
can vote on them now if that's easier.
Okay, either way. We have some other PCOs as well, but we could do it in either order. It doesn't really matter. Comments from the committee? Steve?
That option 2 looks like a really, really long run from one tank to the other tank. That a concern in terms of clogging or slope or any of that kind of stuff, or has this all been looked at?
That's all, this is, I'd like to answer to that, Steve. So this has been the suggestion proposed by Fuss and O'Neill, our civil engineers, who are also responsible for the septic system design of the new school. It does meet their requirements for pitch. This is a gravity line. It's a very simple line. There's no pumping required. It goes straight downhill and then connects into the new tanks that are being installed as part of the new school. And then the effluent from the concession stand would then just be mixed into those tanks and then be discharged in the new school's septic field. It is the most expedient way to solve the problem. Otherwise, if we were to try to build a new septic field for the concession stand, we would need to do soil testing, do perk tests, and then it's a much lengthier review and approval process with the health department. So I think this is really the best way to go.
Okay. Alan, do you have Alan, do you have comments on this? I mean, maybe Alan's not there at the moment. Okay, other questions from the committee? Kathy and then Chris McAvoy.
Are there any drawbacks? I understand it seems to be the simplest thing to do, but as Steve mentioned, are there any drawbacks to doing this? Are there any potential problems down the road?
None that I can see. The septic system that we've designed, or Fuss and O'Neill has designed for the new school, has redundancies built in. So part of their charge was to design the septic system for the new school with the capacity to increase the new building. So they've done that. I think they use a factor of 50%. So it's 1.5 times its desired capacity for the new school. So there is excess capacity built into the new school septic system.
The only, if you want to call it a drawback, that we've heard so far from the just the discussions with Newfield and logistics is without having the leach field in place, when spring baseball and those types of activities are ongoing, the school building's new septic system might not yet be fully up and running. So there might need to be some either porta potties or septic tank pumping or something of that nature, which we can review later. The flip side of that on a positive is that there'll be less maintenance for the leaching fields or replacing of that as it ages, because we'll be tying into the brand new school septic system. So over the long term, it's a plus. Over the short term for spring baseball and those activities, it's just a logistics item we'll have to negotiate.
Okay, Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I only see it like a less than $5,000 difference in the two change orders, but they don't reflect the cost of doing all the work to build the septic. Is that correct? With the soil sampling and all of that? That's just the actual construction part of either building a new septic or running the line, right? I see what
Correct.
you're saying, yes. Okay,
Yes,
so,
that's correct.
okay, so that being the issue, I am concerned about the length of the run, because there's always something that gets in the way and it crosses over some roadway, some paving that we're gonna do, and I always worry about stuff like that. Are there gonna be places that we could have clean outs that would allow for any potential problems that might result?
We'll ask that question of Fuss and O'Neill if they would recommend some cleanup spots in various along the length of that pipe. We'll ask that question.
Chris, Kiefer?
Regarding the cost, the number I remember was about $19,000 to run this thing, and I'm guessing it's about 175 feet. Is that right?
19,800. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the cost of this. And then in terms of distance, I don't have that measurement in front of me. That doesn't sound wrong in terms of order of magnitude, but I don't have that dimension offhand.
But that's it. I'm sorry to beat this drum again. It just feels really expensive for that length. I don't know what else is involved, and it sounds like from what Richard said, it doesn't even include the detailed plans that are required. I'm not worried
200.
about, I know plenty of sewage lines run long distances without issue. No pun intended, but so I'm not concerned about that. But the cost of this, while the place is already dug up, they're not re-sodding anything to speak of, except probably 50 feet by the building. Again, it's just, it feels like an overly expensive job.
It also includes addressing the existing leaching galleries that intersect the work. So
Okay.
it is the pipe entrenching it, but there's some conflict that needs to be resolved up at the point of the issue. So
Are they abandoning the current galleries, or are they going to have to excavate them?
So that will be discussed with the health department. That's, the septic field does have to be decommissioned, but I'm not sure exactly what that entails, whether it's simply cutting a pipe leading to it and abandoning the field, or whether it involves more work, I don't know.
And when you get these prices, and it turns out that the laborer didn't take 64 hours to do it, but instead it was 50 hours, do we actually get the benefit of that? Or are we just, once we take this as the price, that's our price?
this is the price. Usually it's not one where there's going to be less than the 64 hours by a substantial criteria that's going to result in some credit. To the point of evaluating whether or not the pricing is fair. Collier's construction representatives look at this for pricing. Fuss and O'Neill have looked at this insofar as the pricing. Every single potential change order before it comes to the committee, it goes through an evaluative process of looking at quantities and criteria and values to determine whether or not it's a fair price to the town. And frequently, Al can attest to this, we'll go back and forth on items as to whether or not it's a good representation, or hey, why didn't you give us enough credit for this? Sometimes on the order of $20 for some of these items we'll talk about. Again, much to, I'm sure, Al's chagrin. But like I said, anything that comes before the committee as a potential change order for approval gets reviewed by both the architect team and separately by Colliers for that sort of fairness test on whether or not it's worth the cost.
And then again, even if it comes in less expensive for them, fewer hours, we don't get the benefit at all.
Yeah, if they were magically to be able to go faster, no, we would not. To your point, we would not get the credit for that.
Yeah.
But that's not a typical.
I'm just looking. It is about 200. It's no longer than 200 feet because there's the 4-inch PVC.
Yeah, your other option would be go time and materials and do the work on a ticketed basis if you didn't feel that the lump sum proposal was fair, with the hope that you might be able to improve on that T&M. But that can also potentially come in higher,
Sure. Yeah.
Depending on if they hit unsuitables or other things. So
Well, I think if they do
really
that, we're
needs to
still
be
going to
evaluated.
be on the hook, like the last time we hit unsuitables. But I understand. Okay, thanks, Randy.
Okay, any other questions on this? So then I think if we're going to close out this particular topic, someone would make a motion to approve PCO order 33, if this is the option we want. Is there anyone willing to make that motion? Okay, Kathy, thank you. And then is there a second? Steve? Okay, any other? And so there's PCO 33, I've got the right one. Yeah, that's option 2. Okay.
Option 2, yeah.
Okay, then any other questions or discussion? And all in favor of approving PCO number 33? Give me a sign. Any opposed or any abstentions? Okay, thank you. So that finishes that discussion then, right, Adam? There's nothing else for that particular thing?
The only thing I would have is a question for Richard. Richard, is your amendment to your contract substantively the same as the item that was already approved? Or is there any
Yes.
different verbiage?
No, it's the same. It's an hourly not to exceed 10,000, which is what we had estimated, both Fussin O'Neill and TSKP.
Okay, so that item has already been by effect approved by the committee, so it doesn't necessarily need to be approved again.
Correct.
Then, Adam, do you have other items in your report?
That is all I have for now. I will let
Okay.
Richard take the floor.
One thing I will bring up here, I guess, as part of the owner's update is scheduling for our meetings. Our two meetings in November cannot happen as scheduled. One of them is Thanksgiving. Excuse me, and one of them is on the 11th, which is Veterans Day, which we are not allowed to have meetings on that day. So we will do some homework in the background, but I would like to ask you as much as possible to keep the Thursday in between them, the 18th free if possible, because we may have to schedule a special meeting. And potentially next Thursday, but that's probably less likely. But we can't meet on the 11th and the 25th as we were, as is on the calendar. So we're looking for a special meeting somewhere in there to approve invoices. And we will let you know, I think, how the scheduling shakes out. Okay, is that as best as we can? We'll make do. Okay. All right, then, Adam, if you have nothing else, we can move on to architect update. Richard? Or
Yes,
Jeff?
thank you very much. Both Jeff and I will share our discussion this evening. I'll start, Jeff will continue with a few items. The only item I have to report is that on this past Monday, the 25th of October, we had a meeting with the state reviewer on both the FF&E package as well as the technology package. Remember that this was approved by both the building committee and the Board of Ed. We took that information and had a session with Barbara Fabiani, the plan reviewer with the state. It went very well. We did receive some comments, some minor comments. And so we're going to go back to Barbara with some supplemental information for her. And for example, just one of the items on the technology package was that there seemed to be some inconsistency in the counts of the wireless access points, the WAPs. And so I'm working with Jamie to reconcile the quantity. We're not looking at changing any of the budgets that were approved by the building committee or the Board of Ed. It's just a matter of clarifying some discrepancy in those counts. That's a very minor comment. In fact, Barbara was very complimentary about the packages that were prepared. She subsequently called me and said that she went through another review by another design team, also for furniture and technology, and it did not go well at all. So she thanked me for our team being very well prepared for that review. The next step would be to review these packages as soon as we get the state approval letter, review them with the purchasing department in the town and get ready to advertise. Both of these packages will go out to bid. As soon as we get bidders responding to these packages, then we'll have a discussion with the building committee on which vendors to proceed with. We're hoping to get bids back in December and review those vendors, recommended vendors with the committee, so we can proceed with actual purchase orders with the purchasing department at the beginning of the year. So that's all I had to report. So far, so good for both of those phases. That's, by the way, phase 3 of the project, both furniture and technology. So far, so good with that phase. That's all I have. Jeff, I think if you have anything to add.
Yeah, we talked about the music instructional space in classroom 3.1, so I won't get into that. If I can share my screen. There's been some, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can, Jeff.
So there's been some recent discussion about including a pre-KK storage shed for tricycles. And it's going to be potentially a 10 by 16 structure. So we're looking to see if we can get some approval from the committee to proceed with this. The idea is basically we're looking at the possibility of it being located somewhere in here. We're thinking it needs to be adjacent to the pre-K classroom wing. But there's also been discussion about whether we should include it within the fenced area of the playground equipment here for the smaller children. There's also been discussion about potentially having a level play area adjacent for the children to use as a tricycle track. So we are starting to think about where this thing could go. If it goes in the fenced area of the playground for the smaller children, there is concern that there may not be enough room, so we may lose some of the play equipment. And I know in here that we painstakingly try to bring to the table some musical instruments, some tactile components for the children. So this becomes another kind of classroom. So we're a little hesitant about that, but we'd like to bring it up to the building committee for discussion, whether we should continue to pursue it inside or outside, where it possibly could go. We've been thinking about, even along here, but it seems to get too far away from the children's play areas. So I'd like to just open that up for discussion.
Mary?
Jeff, can you show us specifically where I think I see the fenced in area, but just to clarify that.
Yeah, we'll be in here.
Okay.
You can see it here.
So if the track were to go to the left of that, right where you just were there, the tricycle track, that area would not be fenced in.
Correct.
Or would we have to extend fencing there for safety reasons?
I would think we'd have to extend the fencing. Plus, this is also the end of the building as well. So we'd have to be very careful about what we place here and where we put it. We got the parent drop off happening, a lot of activity here. These are the older children. So starting from grade 1 and 2, their playground equipment, and there's different regulations for the heights. And then the older children, 3 and 4 over here. And there's some hard skate play over here. So I guess the challenge is not getting too far away from the pre-KK wing. Mm-hmm. And this does slope down quite a bit. So they would have a nice fast run down here, but I'd be a little bit concerned about that.
Steve, you have a question?
Are we envisioning adults putting these tricycles away or kids putting their own tricycles away and getting them out? How does that work?
Kelly, you might want to speak to that.
So we talked primarily about this being an instructional use of tricycles. So, we have not designed this to be an independent program. It was not part of the original conversations about the outdoor play area. Currently, the trikes are used primarily in adaptive settings with students with special needs or not, or just children who haven't had bike experience. And so I do think it's going to be more of an instructional program than an independent use program. I don't know if Lauren has a different opinion on that.
Thanks, Kelly. I think the initial idea was that it was going to be independent, and the more we've talked about it, I feel like it's turning into instructional use, but I'd be happy with either version of that. Children are coming to us with less experiences on the tricycles, and would love to see us find a way if it was in the, if everyone agrees.
So I guess I'm not quite sure I understand either way, but if you're expecting the kids to get the tricycles out and put them away, I'd be in favor of putting it next to the building. And if not, if it's a teacher or instructor that's going to be putting these things away after the kids are done using, I'd be more in favor of putting it on the other side of the cart path away from the building so it doesn't mess up the aesthetic.
Yeah, I would like to add that we have thought about this quite a bit, and we know that there is going to be quite a number of trees removed. If you go visit the site, you'll see there's a lot of X's. And so there is the possibility on the others, and I'm glad Steve brought up the point about on the other side of that path. On the other side of the path, there could be an opportunity where Jeff is circling right now, a fairly level area. If there's a lot of trees removed from that area, that could be a good trike and scooter kind of activity area, and not too far from the pre-KK classrooms, certainly within view. And this would be done with teachers there, I'm sure. So that's another possibility. So we can engage our landscape architect to explore that as a possibility. But this is a modification in the site plan, so it's going to affect potentially paved areas, topography, plantings. It's not a simple just plopping down a shed, a prefabricated shed. It does need some site work. So what we would like to do is come back to the committee with a proposal to do this additional site work with some options, maybe a couple of options on locations, and then we can get those priced before actually any work gets done. So this is an item I think Jeff wanted to bring to your attention. This is under discussion. I'm not sure that any particular action is required by the committee tonight. We just wanted to alert you that we will be coming back with a proposal to do some site changes in response to this request.
Chris?
Yeah, as Steve mentioned this, and I'm sure Jeff's got it under control, the aesthetics of it. But I'd be really curious to see the thing, not as a rectangle on the plan, but what does it look like relative to the building, you know, against the building, whatever. What color is it? What's siding? What sort of roof? Is it gonna, yada, da, 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 da. So anyhow, I'd like to know what the thing looks like. And then I think really Lauren should be the main decider on where it goes based on the uses she envisions for it. Now you did say, Jeff, that it's about 16 feet by 10, and I'm just trying to find something that's 16 feet. Is the road 16 feet wide where that arrow is? Is that a little wider?
Well, a parking stall is 18 feet wide. I'm sorry, 9 feet.
18 feet long.
20 feet
Yeah,
by 18 feet long.
So 10 feet is a parking
So
stall.
it's basically it's parking
Stall, correct.
Thanks, Richard.
Hey, Chris McNamara and then Kathy.
So if it's going to be mostly an activity that will be directed by instruction, what about doing it as part of the PE program and having it be an indoor thing so you get more use out of it, more time of the year? I mean, I would have loved to have had biking lessons when I went to elementary school, but I don't want to date myself.
Okay, I guess Lauren and Kelly can think about that. Kathy?
And I,
Well, just going back to Chris, not to date myself, but as a former PE teacher, I would have had a heart attack if you were putting tricycles on my gym floor. My second question is, will the state pay for any of this? Is any of this reimbursable, or this is just another add-on that we're going to be responsible for?
I think this is Scott from Colliers. I think there would be a good argument if it was a programmatic requirement. You know, if it was part of the curriculum, whether tied into the PE program, et cetera. I think there would be a good case that we could make for the state to add this as a program need. But, you know, again, we can't speak on behalf of the state, but I would say that, you know, certainly we would take this to the state and you know, present the case for reimbursement.
Hey, Lauren, you want to give us some guidance on this?
Yeah, if I could jump in, one of the reasons this came up over the summer, we embarked on with Bike Mansfield, actually. There was a grant that was received from the, sorry about that, we have running club going on in the background here, it's loud. Bike Mansfield helped us to receive a grant, train the trainers to teach the two of our PE teachers biking regulations and how to teach students biking. So I just want to give some context that this came from a grant that we had received this past summer, and we started embarking on that. It's not a high level grant. I think it was only $1,000, but that's part of where this idea came from.
And in terms of the track that they would ride on, is that envisioned to be within that fenced area already? And is it take something different than what has already been planned?
Well, we'd have to look at that, whether it's a circle or whether coming back and forth is enough. So I'm sure that would be part of the study, what we need to do.
Okay, well then, any other questions? Then I guess you guys can kind of flesh out some of the plans, some of the ideas, and let us know what it might take.
Yeah, we can send you a proposal. First of all, there's a fee associated with landscape revisions, site plan revisions. So that's the first step. We can get you a proposal to do site plan modifications. So that's the first step. The second step is, what is this shed? Is it a prefabricated shed? To Chris's point, what does it look like? It could be a prefabricated shed, or it could be something that's designed that is using material that's compatible with the building. That's the second part of the question. But the first part is, where's a sensible site location and what changes to the site are required? We'll need the help of Richter and Segan to do that.
And I just so I'm clear and the committee's clear, those are questions that will come back to us that we can then answer in terms of getting the ball rolling on this.
Yes, we will send you a proposal for engaging Richter and Segan to do the site plans. Yes, that will come back to the committee.
Okay. Okay, good enough. Then
Yeah, there's one other thing I have
go ahead,
here. Regarding the encroachment permit, we got a response back from Fosun O'Neill. They got a response back from the DOT that they need to adjust the driveway radii along this state road, Route 89. So right now it's in our landscape architect's lap. They're trying to expedite this as fast as possible to get this back into the DOT. But I think there was a few other comments, but this is the last remaining one that they need to complete before they get that final approval, hopefully.
okay. Chris?
Jeff, will it affect the number of parking spaces?
No,
how significant is it?
No, it's just, it's relating to crossing the center marking in the state roadway and the radius of turning so they don't cross. So if they zoom in here, they're trying not to sweep and cross into the other lane. So we have to modify these radii on
Okay,
the
but it doesn't
exiting
really
entry.
affect what we're doing.
No.
Okay.
And I believe that's all I had. Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Any final questions for the architectural team? Okay. Then on to construction update.
Before we go into construction, Richard and Jeff, do you want to have the IKD Amendment 3?
Right. At a prior building committee meeting, we were authorized to contact IKD to proceed with some conceptual work for art walls or instructional walls in the public areas of the school. We have reached out to them. We did get a proposal. It's within what we had talked about with the committee. So that would be an amendment to our contract as well. That would be amendment number 3. And so we did forward that to the committee and to Collier's, I believe.
It's in the committee's packet for this meeting, yes.
Yes, so we would need action on that amendment.
Okay, I'm trying to find it. And the
Yes, under, if it's in the meeting packet, item 4B.
okay.
Richard, on these things like this shed, do you guys, does TSKP, uh-oh, can you hear me? Yes. Does
Okay.
TSKP charge a fee for this? Do I dare call it additional work?
Yes, we would. I mean, if we're going to design a custom shed that uses material to match the building, yeah, that's not an off-the-shelf item. That's something that we would have to design.
But the work that you've done so far, is this all stuff that you're punching in and out about?
So we haven't charged anything to have these discussions and explore these different locations. But if we are actually charged with the task of designing the shed, yes, we would charge for that.
Okay.
Or someone could find one that's prefabricated and placed onto the site in a location designated by the landscape architect. That's the alternative path.
Mhm.
I think we would like to have the opportunity to design the shed, but we would have to have people in the office spend time doing that.
Maybe Al will find us some scraps of that titanium siding that we can slip
Titanium.
on.
Zinc.
Chris McNamara?
Moving on to this whole idea of the IKD thing, can someone refresh my memory? I'm sorry, I can't remember what the 3 art walls were. Sorry.
So this was related to the educational walls that were discussed as part of educating visitors to the building about whether it be the history of the school or the net zero aspect, and then also using them as part of the teaching tools for the students and when parents come. So a couple, at this point is over a month ago, we had a sort of a brainstorming session with some of the committee members and Kelly and Lauren and Richard and IKD, the sub-consultant, to go over what that might look like insofar as spaces in the building, et cetera. And then I think it was maybe 3 committee meetings ago, we asked Richard to get a proposal from IKD to actually, give us some substance as opposed to, we've got a lot of ideas here, can we put some money towards this to put pen to paper to give us some renderings of what that could look like? So this proposal is the result of that.
Thank you. Thanks. It was just that concept of art walls that I wasn't getting. That educational thing certainly rings a bell. Thank you.
So to move forward on this, I guess Richard and Adam, we would need to approve this amendment 3, which is a proposal for a fixed fee of $10,000 plus reimbursables.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Is there then a motion to approve amendment 3? Chris, thank you. Second, Madison? Or do you have a question, Madison? Second? Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, then all in favor of approving this amendment 3, please give me a sign. Any opposed? Or any abstentions? Okay, then Richard, then you can proceed with that. Okay. That concludes then the architect's update, if I'm correct. And we can go on to Al for the construction update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. This is an aerial view of the lower level, Area B and Area C. I'll just run through what we've been doing since our last meeting. As you know, last meeting we talked about this area right here with the unsuitable soils. Since that meeting a month ago, we've gotten direction from the geotechnical engineer about the extent of the unsuitables. We removed the foundations, removed the unsuitable material, put in structural fill and rebuilt the foundations. They just finished late last week. So right now, we're just waiting on this concrete to come up to strength so that we can start setting steel. We're hoping, we got the footing breaks yesterday, which came up to strength. So we're hoping that we have the wall breaks tomorrow or Monday, and we're set to start setting steel on Wednesday. So we were hoping to be a little more ahead in this area, but unfortunately we're not. So they have been doing the decking, the floor decking in area B here and area A. Right now they are welding shear studs on the decking in preparation of floor slabs, which we probably will be doing in about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. We're doing underground plumbing in this area while they're working on the steel over here. Once they move over to here, we'll probably do underground plumbing in this area under the steel decking. We're leveling out the slab in the gym area over here. Steel laying here for the for this area. This isn't all of it, but it's a good portion of it. So we're set to go once we get the go ahead. We're waterproofing the high retaining walls in this area here. We're getting ready to damp proof these walls in area B. The concrete contractor has built out the stage area and the ramp footings. He'll be doing walls there fairly soon. I'm going to switch to another photo.
Al, could you just explain two things? You said, I wish I'd written it down, but the something about on the footings that you put for the steel, what was there was a construction term.
The breaking.
Breaking, yes, what is that? And could you use it in a sentence, please?
The breaking?
The steel breaks or something?
Or 7-day
like
breaks.
Oh. They do compression breaks. When we're pouring concrete, the testing lab will make these cylinders.
Okay, and that's, you break the cylinders.
They break the cylinder, they measure how many pounds it takes to break that cylinder, and by doing that, they can tell what the strength of the concrete is. So that in our case, the design strength is 4,500 pounds, and we have to come up to 75% strength according to OSHA before we can set any steel on the foundations. And in our case, it's about 3,300 pounds of pressure, 3,350, I think it is. So if we exceed that 3,350, we've exceeded the 75% strength, and then we can proceed with steel. So that we're waiting for that 7-day break right now.
There, that was the term, yeah. Oh, and then one other question, you said shear studs. What's a shear stud?
A shear stud gets welded to, you see all these beams that go?
Yeah, there's one that's a little off. What's that? What's with that?
This is all, everything on this side of that is all the wood beams, which are coming in about a month or so. So below this decking, you have all these beams that run this way, and along the course of one beam, you might have 12 or 14 shear studs that get welded on top of the deck, and it kind of solidifies the slab in place. It's a structural item, but it probably takes 2 weeks to do the decking in this area with shear studs. It's a very tedious thing to do. So it's usually one guy shooting shear studs, for 2 weeks. So.
Thank you.
See if I have another picture here.
And your pictures again are fabulous, really fabulous.
Thank you. So this is a photo that you can see where they've started doing the front of the building right here.
It's the same photo.
We are still in the same photo on that we can see, Al.
Oh, you are?
You
may need to stop sharing and then share again.
Okay. Let me go back there. I don't know how to get back there. I'm sure I can't share it.
You have to,
Can you
see
stop?
how, there you
Yeah,
Oh,
go.
here I am. I got it now. All right. There it is.
Yeah.
Can you
there
see
we
it
go.
now?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see up in this area, we've started, this is will be the new front of the building. So you can see it's a pretty good sized area here in this area A. So he's poured this today. He's going to be forming up the footings in this area tomorrow. So you'll see this develop in the next few weeks, but in the next meeting, you'll see the foundations in place in here, and you'll see the total outline of the building. The geothermal well drilling is complete. They're actually tying in all the geothermal lines, and they'll be taking those into a manifold, and then from that manifold, there'll be 2 8-inch lines that go into the building. We have the temporary water is going to be switched over on Saturday morning. So the school will now be running from the new wells that we've put in, and the old wells will be abandoned. We'll be able to remove the fire tank that's in this section of foundation here. So that's proceeding, and we're on track there. That's about it. That's all about I can say for now. So you'll see more progress once we can start setting steel over in B. We do have a delay with the joist and the decking in the gym area. So that's going to be pretty wide open. We'll concentrate on B and we'll concentrate on A. This is where most of the classrooms are here in B. You have some classrooms in A along this wing. So we're going to try to get the classrooms up and running first. Priority, get those up and ready so we can move furniture in. So we've started the canopy right here. We've started forming up and pouring these canopies. This is the walkway that extends out here for the bus loop. We've started that. So that's about where we're at. We've had this delay in area B, but other than that, it's going pretty well.
Okay, questions for Al from anyone? Okay. All right, then thanks, Al, for that update.
You're welcome.
Hey, Randy, before we close out on the construction update, can I share a photo?
Sure, sure.
Can you stop? Thanks.
Yep.
This is a picture from today.
Oh,
We had a special assembly at Southeast School today that the governor attended, and we were able to get him to come back out to the construction site and gave him a little information session on what net zero school design is all about and some of the other instructional design features of the school, and was really glad to be able to share with him what we're doing. He seemed quite impressed, and he did say he'd be back for the ribbon cutting. So we're hoping.
that's great. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, then we can move on to, we have some other PCOs to review.
Yes, so since we took care of 32 and 33, the remaining PCOs to review are 29, 30, and 31, all related to unsuitable soils, our favorite topic of conversation. So, like I said, the three change orders are just different areas of the site. And so we compartmentalize them into individual PCOs so that way to better keep track of the quantities, and in case there's any questions or what have you, they're more neatly compartmentalized. 29 is I can share my screen real quick. Just we're all looking at the same thing. PCO 29 is for unsuitable soils at the pump house. So that was partly in that area that we were just talking about with regard to the leach field. But just next to the pump house where there was organic materials and old bottles and things from 40, 50, 60 years ago. PCO 30 is for the area underneath a canopy in the front of the building. Up. So right here in front, there was a pocket of unsuitable soils, and then PCO 31 was just to the north of that at area by the future bus loop. Some of the items before the committee are for $9,152 for PCO 29. And then PCOs 30 and 31 are both for $3,432. The quantities were.
I move we approve them and get this behind us.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve PCOs 29, 30, and 31. Is there a second? Steve, I saw your hand first. Any other questions? Then all in favor of approving PCOs 29, 30, and 31, give me a sign. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's that. Next up is the project invoices.
Yes. That packet was put in the committee folder, item number 7. Total of 1.7 million amongst the various designers, colliers, testing lab, architect, etc. And then Newfield's pay application number 5 for $1,652,590.
Okay, so Mary,
I would like to make a motion
great.
to approve the monthly invoice packet for September of 2021 dated today, October 28th, including invoices from BSC Group, CES, Colliers Project Leaders, Independent Materials Testing Labs, TSKP Studios, and Weston and Sampson in the amount of $54,315.08, along with the Newfield application for payment number 5 in the amount of $1,652,590.34 for a total approval of $1,706,905.42.
Okay. That's a mouthful. Okay, thank you, Mary. Is there a second? Rich, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, then all in favor of approving the September invoice summary and the associated invoices, give me a sign. Any opposed or any abstentions? Okay, great. And that brings us to our tree removal update.
Yes, so we put the scope identified for the arborist out to potential bidders for removal of the approximately 70 trees that he had marked, as well as some of the felled logs and saving one of the logs for future use by the school. We put that out to potential bidders. We had a pre-bid walkthrough. There were a number of companies that showed for the walkthrough, and we received 2 bids, one from J&J Brothers and one from Distinctive Tree Care. I included a bid tabulation summary in the committee packet. We did follow up with the references for both contractors. Both received good references from prior clients, and both contractors appear to have understood the scope and provided responsive bids. Distinctive Tree Care did have some qualifications on their bid, which I enumerated, but J&J Brothers appears to be the lowest qualified bidder after having the scope reviews and conversations with the bidders.
Okay, and there were 2 different bids from J&J. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the difference is?
Yep. So the base bid was the scope to preserve the understory trees. So anything over 2 inches in diameter. The idea was that that would be saved. Anything under that would have been considered part of the underbrush and wouldn't have been saved. So the base bid is a more labor intensive scope because you're working around existing understory trees. And the purpose of that, as recommended by the arborist, was to help maintain some of the soils and to help provide a future growth buffer for when those trees continue to grow up and reestablish the buffer. The alternate was to explore potential cost savings by not requiring the contractors to save those understory trees. So they can be, more, they can be faster in their work. They don't have to dance around some of the smaller trees while they're taking down the larger trees that were flagged for removal. And the idea where there was, if we can save some money, potentially that money might be utilized for putting back trees of our own in a different configuration, perhaps, and to reestablish that buffer. I did have a conversation with the landscape architect for the project, Richard Segan, just to get a sense of what, if the committee did elect to go for the alternate A route, what we might be able to put back. And the general notion was that for $40,000 or $50,000, you could replace substantially the number of trees that were taken down in new pines and maybe some deciduous trees to replace some of the buffer that's been taken out. So if you've been to the site, you can see houses in the background that you would have never been able to see before the tree clearing took place. So the committee would have the opportunity to put back some trees to help restore some of that buffer in maybe a more judicious way to help provide some of that privacy and blocking between the school building and the neighbors.
Okay. Questions or comments? Chris McNamara?
So the 143,200 includes the ability to plant back. It's $61,000 for the requirement to protect the understory. So that comes off of the 143 too, or?
Right. So if we're looking at, for example, J&J Brothers,
Right.
If they are required to save the 2-inch diameter caliber trees, then it'll cost $143,000. If the committee does not require them to do that, it'll only cost $82,000.
82,000.
And if, for example, if the committee wanted to use some of that delta funds to help put back some trees, we could explore that option.
Okay, that's a pretty significant difference. Chris Kiefner?
Yeah, I took a walk there a few days ago, and I thought that there were a number of trees that didn't need to come down. I mean, there are this job is so much more expensive than I think it ought to be to start with, that I'm definitely looking for ways in which to make it less expensive at whatever price it is. But I do think that there are trees that actually should not, it's not necessary to take them down. And once everything is done, the fence is out and so forth, the town could do it at far less expense without, and before whatever happens that, you wouldn't want to damage things. So anyhow, I'm remain very frustrated by this, by the cost of it. And as I say, when I went to see it, it was much more extreme than I thought was necessary, but I was alone. I didn't go with an arborist or a Richard to help guide my eyes.
Kathy?
Whichever direction we go in, I think it's really, really important that we keep those community folks in mind and do the best we can to repair whatever damage we've done to them. Not only is it good for PR, but I think it's important that they have faith that we're going to take care of the neighborhood. So whether we plant trees or we make sure ones there are okay, I think it's really important that we take care of the neighbors.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I agreed with a lot of the trees that would feel very threatening to the houses that are there. It was the ones closer out in the ropes area that surprised me that they were marked. And then there are some other ones that are significantly smaller that wouldn't really matter were they to fall, and I don't think that they were that threatening. But Kathy, I completely agree with you. I think that the neighbors have been, to my mind, unexpectedly heavily burdened by this, certainly aesthetically, and they may also feel that way, again, in terms of threat or safety.
Steve?
I've driven up and down Pine Woods a couple of times, and I was surprised by how open it felt from the road to the school. So I would be in favor of not requiring the contractors to save the small trees, because I think we could do a better job with the savings of planting back new trees in more preferable locations to provide a better screen between the neighborhood and the school. I think that would be a much better use of those funds than protecting trees that just happen to be there and may or may not be in the best location to buffer the school from the neighborhood.
Okay.
To comment on that, if the committee does elect to go the route of not saving understory trees and then replanting something, what we can do is obtain get a proposal from Richter and Segan to do a simple design of trees and specifications and heights and things, and then get pricing for that as the next step in that function.
Okay. So, Chris, go ahead.
Could we get a sense, Adam or Scott, kind of how we stand on our contingency money? What are we in a normal place relative to other projects you've seen? What percentage have we chewed up so far? Knowing that there are other PCO kinds of things that have us in their headlights.
Yeah, I do believe, Scott from Colliers, I do believe after the last meeting, we sent you contingency status, and we can send that again after this meeting. But I can say in this forum that you are in a very strong position right now for contingency, because we did well within bidding. But again, we always need to be very prudent about spending both state and taxpayer dollars, because the taxpayers are still, footing a bill for this. So we will provide the committee an update on the contingency status log by the end of the week. But I will say that you are in good standing. And just if I may opine on this subject a little bit, I think, in my opinion, as much as the good intent of trying to maintain some of the smaller trees for the additional amount of money, I am concerned that some of those smaller trees would get damaged no matter how careful the contractor is in trying to remove the trees. So I think personally, my opinion would be, allow them to remove the trees with the cost savings, and they use that cost savings to put back good, sound, healthy trees that are appropriate for the site, and could be a variety as recommended by the landscape architect.
See a couple thumbs up. In that case, it seems like the J&J Brothers alternate A seems to be the preferred way forward. Is there someone willing to make a motion to accept the J&J Brothers alternate A bid? Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Kathy, thank you. Any last comments or questions? Seeing none, then all in favor of approving that motion for J&J Brothers alternate A, give me a sign. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Tony, you abstain?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, that passes then. And then that brings us to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Chris, thank you. Second. Kathy, thank you. And all in favor of adjourning, you may sign off, and we will see you next time. And again, Kelly, you had a question, comment? No? Okay. All right, saying goodbye. All right. Try to keep the next couple of Thursdays open for us in case we have to do a special meeting. All right. Thank you all.
Right.
Hello?